Looks like we're good. Welcome everybody to another weekly OpenJS Foundation Cross-Project Council meeting. Today is the 21st of January. I just heard from Toby, he's not feeling too well, so he won't be able to join us today, but we'll check in with him soon in terms of that AMP progress. There's always next week, right? Cool. Where do we want to begin? Do we have any announcements?
Announcements, yes. So we have opened our call for proposals to the OpenJS Foundation conference in June. That was open on Wednesday. You have until February 21st to get your proposals in. We would love to really cast a far and wide net for proposals this year. So please do share and tell your friends and make sure your communities are aware of this, because I think it's going to be an awesome event. The other thing is that we are hoping to have the public board meeting on Friday. And that the calendar, OpenJS Foundation calendar has that meeting data in it. So if you want to listen in to the public version of the board meeting, that's going to be on Friday. I want to also say a big thank you to Tierney and Marshall for hooking us up with some goodies in Slack. And those are the announcements that I have.
Yeah, that's great. The Slack stuff is awesome. Thank you to both of them. I want to say really quickly before Ben Mitchell has to bail, but he is now a regular member on the Cross Project Council. As I was saying earlier, I'm speaking for Ben because he thinks one of his children took his headphones and is at a loud coffee shop, so he can't speak, but I wanted to welcome. He's merged in and added to all the lists, and super happy to have him getting involved.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah. Great. You can bail now if you need to, and we'll catch up on other things. And then there was another thing I wanted to mention. Where are my notes? And Brian, maybe you could add a little bit about this, but I wanted to make sure we touched on the project infrastructure survey.
Yes. So Linux Foundation is doing a brief survey of our projects, and I'm brief, I mean like 5 questions, maybe 45 seconds worth of work, just to understand a little more about what various folks are using in terms of unit testing and other testing frameworks. So I dropped a link into the Slack in the info channel. If you would be willing to take this and to fill out the information, I would greatly appreciate it. Again, like 45 seconds max, 5 questions.
I am going to share it into the general channel because right? Not everybody's
That is the Linux Foundation doing just for the minutes, 45-second questionnaire on what people are using for unit testing.
Yep, unit testing and testing frameworks.
Cool. And that's in the general
channel. Are we going to
channel.
be able to get access to the data?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Might even be able to call this a user feedback survey. Anyway.
Did you paste the link somewhere, Joe?
Let me paste this whole bit that Brian shared. I will put it in the chat. I shared it in the general channel of Slack, but now it's in the chat as well.
Okay, and I will paste that into the minutes unless there's a reason why not.
I don't think so.
Great. No, please do. Thank you very much, folks. Appreciate it.
Great. Cool. Let's see. So where are we? Jumping into, I guess, is there anything on the board side? I know there was mention of a meeting this Friday. Anything you want to talk about there briefly? People.
I can take this. So just in general, the board is looking at a variety of things like 2020 conference. So that's obviously coming up in June, and there's some discussions around some of the logistics and so forth around that. Also working on 2020 budget. We had some preliminary discussions today, and hopefully we'll have further discussions on Friday about getting that finalized and ready to go.
Excellent. All right, and if anybody has anything, that they think the board should be aware of, reach out to Michael or
the other thing
Chris.
to mention is there has been discussion of Miles' request for like a statement on the funding for the travel fund. So hopefully we'll see something on that relatively soon.
Great. Thanks for mentioning that. I wasn't sure where that stood. Cool. So we can jump into the agenda items here. The first one is issue 445. This is Meta, where shall certain resources live? Jory, you opened this up. I was reading through it earlier. Do you want to give some context? We can chat.
Yeah, so I actually also was spending some time thinking about this prior to the meeting. Where this came from is this interest that I have, and I think we all share, in making sure that our onboarding projects and our existing projects have access to all of the information about things that the foundation can do to support it, like from the infrastructure menu of services to marketing services, that, like, all of these kinds of things. And it's not super evident where one would go to find that. So the question in my mind came from, like, onboarding new projects, where can I tell them, hey, if you need further info, or you want to learn a little bit more about this later because I'm brain dumping a bunch of stuff at you right now, go check out this resource or this repository or whatever. And I also started thinking about how that's also related just generally to our overall information architecture strategy when it comes to managing other things that we need to know about projects, such as where their project charters live and who their points of contact are, and like that kind of thing too, because it's a bit of a two-way thing. So not that I came up with any super clever solutions to that yet, but I go, this is a rabbit hole I'm falling down.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if we capture some of the things that we would expect to live in this sort of repo or place in the issue, it might become more evident, because I think project resources kind of make sense, but then it starts to feel like project guidance, or it could cover a variety of things. So I wonder.
Yeah, and thoughts? Where would you all go look for this?
I mean, I think a GitHub repo makes sense, but it also may make sense to link to it from other places, like perhaps the CPC README, as well as a page on the foundation website or something.
Yeah, it does seem like this would be useful to link from the website. Exactly. And then Brian, you suggested using the pattern having a foundation repo, because that's something that other LF projects are doing. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It's a pretty common practice among the other projects. Basically, it just provides a consistent way of looking for certain documents, if that's what you're looking for. I mean, one way or another, it doesn't really matter. It's not going to break anything if it's something else. It's a lightly used convention.
And what do those other projects have in that directory or repo?
Generally, it's the various governance documents. So not necessarily in our case, we have the CPC documents in their own repository, but it would be a central place to find things like the bylaws. It could be a place to hold public meeting minutes, for example, for the public board meetings. which, CPC repo might not be appropriate for that, could be used for documentation that's specific to the foundation. Like, for example, how to find and subscribe to the members mailing list. Things which we do have on openjsf.org, but sometimes it helps to have these in a second redundant place.
Right.
So it really would be for foundation specific stuff.
Right. That all makes sense to me, but it doesn't strike me what Jory was looking for. Right. Like if I saw a foundation, that's the kind of things I would think there. But we almost want this is how we can help you directory, or need help, or want something, or it's like, if people want something, how can they, and it's like, it's the infrastructure services, or it's marketing services, or it's
for things like that. I guess that's the other half of it. More than just a document store, it's helpful to have someplace to be able to file issues that would be separate from CPC issues. And regardless of what it is, whatever it's called doesn't particularly matter, but this would be an appropriate place to have that sort of bug tracker as well.
Yeah, I mean, project resources and services seems to encapsulate what we're talking about now, but who knows if it goes beyond that.
It's like project support and resources, and I don't know, it's like,
Yeah.
like, I could see there being a repo for foundation to have the kind of stuff Brian put in, and then a separate one, which is this project support, or what's the name that immediately makes everybody think of the right thing?
So I also wonder, if we want to eventually, because we have project onboarding, right? And as a repo, where I had always sort of imagined that as maybe being a temporary repo, because we'll get through the completion of onboarding our 30 plus existing projects and some of these incubating projects. And maybe project onboarding is actually a longer term repo, and that's where, because ideally onboarding a project includes making them aware of these resources, like kind of like your employee handbook, I suppose, which might be where you go and look up again what your benefits are or something. That's maybe a terrible analogy, I'm sorry.
Actually, but I like the word benefits when you said it.
Yeah, I do too. Like, we have benefits. We got nice benefits.
Yeah, maybe it's like
benefits.
Member benefits.
Well, that means something kind of specific, I think, right? But anyway, we could probably spend a lot of time on this. Maybe we should dump it back to the issue.
Yeah, but there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But
that's what this issue is about. Sorry.
Yep. All right, cool. Well, let's kind of brainstorm on the issue and see what sits right, and we can move forward from there. I think it's a good question. Cool. Where am I here? All right, so this is a big one. The next one is the start a code of conduct team. I don't think there's been necessarily a lot of progress here, other than an email thread, HackMD doc to start to capture some of these things. And I feel like there's something else. Oh, an issue the one that we're looking at. Jory, do you want to comment on this at all, or?
Sure. Yeah. So following our conversation after last CPC meeting, I sent this that email out to the CPC private list just to make sure we're capturing the attention of CPC members first, to weigh in on that problem statement that Michael Dawson and I think also Jordan Harband and myself have contributed to in HackMD. So that HackMD link is on the issue. So you should be able to click on the issue and then click through and see what we've come up with so far. As a just refresher, our objective is to just pull together a group of people who want to finesse that problem statement to a point where the CPC is comfortable with us undertaking that scope of work so that we can then go out to the broader community and draw in participants to actually start addressing that scope of work. So that's essentially where we're at. We need to reach agreement on the problem statement so that we can go recruit.
Great. Yeah, so anybody who's interested, please take a look at that HackMD doc and help us flesh it out further. I'm going to try to spend some more time with it as well. And hopefully in the next week or two, we can feel comfortable, you know, stamping this to move forward on and get some progress here. Make sense? Anybody else have any comments on this? Cool.
Just a heads up, Miles, that I threw you in as a participant based on some past interests, so you can confirm or refute that.
I'm definitely interested in helping, but it's just a time thing. I'm super overcommitted right now, so I was hesitant to volunteer for something if I don't have time.
Which is fair. I'll try to ping James or Mateo as well and see if either of them have any time to help us work through this as well. We had some really great conversations at Collab Summit that I think be great to get some of the node experience in this conversation.
Yep. Yeah,
Cool.
and I think that's key on the extensions part, right? Like the first part, maybe we don't have to wait for that if people don't have time, but
Yeah.
I don't want to, I think it's important not to hold up, you know, indefinitely getting something landed.
Yeah, agreed. And we can, you know, iterate on this and get some work going and then have folks who are experienced or have more context would have you, you know, comment and help shape as we go along. Cool. All right, great. We won't spend much time on that then. And I'll move on to pull request 414. This is the add foundation-wide copyright guidance. If I remember correctly, Brian and Toby were going to get together on this. We have Brian on the call. I'm trying to scroll to the bottom here.
Yeah, we're getting together this week.
Great.
Not last week.
Great. Toby just said he's sick though, so maybe next week we'll see. But yeah, keep us posted. We'll double back on this one. Great. Do we have anything on the next item, which is the foundation landscape, project landscape? I think were we saying that? I think there was a question last week, Brian, whether there was already kind of a you know, some sort of version of this put together that we would explore, or is it just an offer to do the work and we should figure out whether we want it?
Oh no, the hard work's already done on this. Dan Kahn went and did this and put it together for us to take a look at over a month ago.
Okay, how do we go? How do we look at it?
It should be in the original. Should be in the original pull request. Let me just check and see, or the original issue. Yeah, it's a non-trivial amount of work, and
I'm sure
already done for us. So
yeah,
give me a second to find it.
yeah, I'm looking through. I don't actually see it in here. While while you're peeking or looking around otherwise, I'll jump to the next issue quickly. We can double back. The next one is add post-graduation checklist. Toby, this is a pull request 386. Toby, I think, yeah, Toby put this together. There are some conflicts that need to be resolved. Okay, it looks like, Michael, you were asking if we could land it so that the board could vote on it this week. I don't know if you had a chance to talk to Toby at all, Michael.
haven't talked to him other than what's in the issue. We have a board meeting this week, so it's an easy time to do it. Not that, otherwise we'll do it through email. What it really needs though is like potentially a rebase, but more than that, our governance says we need like half the voting members to have approved it.
I see.
So I think that's the biggest blocker right now. Like if we had half the people approving it, okay, a rebase is not going to substantially materially change what's there. So I think we could have approve it, and then when we fix it up, land it, right?
So you mean approve it at the board level?
Well, like first we should have it approved at the CPC
Yeah.
level. And then, if this was approved, even though it needs to be rebased, I'm saying I doubt the rebase is a material change, so we could probably land it then, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to take it to the board, we need the voting CPC members to actually, add their vote, because that's what we've got. I mean, this is kind of a gray area. Where is this extending the governance, extending the charter or not? But we've chosen so far to say, let's be conservative. So I guess the key ask is, can the voting members look in and, maybe say approve subject to rebase or whatever.
Mm-hmm. And you keep saying voting members, but is it specifically voting members or just members?
It unfortunately says, I shouldn't say unfortunately. The governance says specifically 1/2 of the voting members.
Okay.
Like this is the link I can
All
paste into the chat.
Yeah, please. I think, did you even include it down here? I'm trying to look.
It says poll requests to change the charter of the CPC must meet the following conditions. Addition 1 listed for changing CPC governance. Text of the PR must be approved by a simple majority of the voting members. The text of the PR must be approved by the board.
And I think this kind of goes back to a conversation that we had earlier about there being voting members who are elected who have not participated at all, and that kind of blocking the ability to follow the charter itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so far we have one voting member who's approved. So I agree that's an issue, but I don't know if that's going to block this or not once we try and get to the half. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe we should ping an email list or something to try and get this onto people's radars to move it along. But I agree, Miles, that the other issue is still an issue as well. All right. Yeah, if we could, I can try to send it to, we have like a voting members list, right? Or is that just the CPC private list? I don't know.
It's just the CPC private list, I think.
Okay.
We have the voting like team on GitHub, but I don't think that doesn't always send an email.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, well, let me just make a quick note to try and send something out. Okay. Cool. We can move on then, or actually move backwards, I suppose. Brian, did you happen to find anything?
I was just looking, and you know what? I may have misspoken. Maybe we don't have this yet. Maybe
Okay.
I think 2 of my other projects.
Well,
I'm just looking for the link. I could have sworn that we saw a preview of this, though, and I'm trying to find it.
And
We do have a preview, Brian. I can pull.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I'm unless I was dreaming, I saw it. Like when I was just we were having a discussion on something and you showed it to me.
Yeah.
That's why I was saying last year I think you have a draft that you could share, but we don't know where it is.
Yeah, it's a mystery.
Is it something that should remain out of the public space, or like should we drop a link into the issue?
No, I mean, absolutely. It's something to preview.
Okay. Yeah.
Just gotta find it. It's in a staging environment somewhere.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, maybe, you know, when that is found, drop it into the issue and we can scope it out and, you know, continue that conversation.
Will do.
Thank you, Brian. Awesome. Let's see. So next, move COC proposal to stage 3. That's blocked on 432, which is the start a code of conduct team. Or at least it's waiting on it, I'd say. But so we'll do that. We'll jump over to clarify travel fund status and process. So this is issue 377, but there is a pull request 441 that is open. And I think, is this the one where we're talking about dollars? Yeah. Okay, and it looks like Mateo is backing off a little bit.
There were
So
kind of
I mean,
two
yeah,
key
go ahead.
parts of that. One is, you know, is the budget that we have sufficient? And Miles can jump into here because I know he had quite a few discussions with Teo and so forth. The other one is around who approves. There seems to be some discussion starting in terms of a direction other than what was in there, which was the CPC doing the approvals. So we should probably talk about each of those separately. Do you want to take the first one, Miles?
So read the budget. We had a finance committee meeting for the board today. We were reviewing the budget. The general sentiment in the group was that we used half the budget last year, that we would not change the budget. And having double the budget that we used last year seemed like, you know, a prudent first step, especially when we try to keep accurate budgets. But it was, you know, pretty widely held. No one objected to the notion that if we needed more, that more would become available. This budget is seen as extremely important, and that on Friday's board meeting, we would, you know, confer with the entire board on approving a statement that would be made, that could be made on behalf of the board, assuring more or less what I just stated.
Okay,
Are there anybody to go ahead?
I was going to say, I'm reading the comments about having the specific governing bodies for each project be the ones to do, you know, I think at a minimum, the initial approval for travel requests, which makes sense to me.
Right. Just on the point Miles made is, it sounded like, you know, he talked to Mateo, and Mateo was okay with that suggestion. Is there anybody, is that okay with everybody here as well? That, you know, if the board comes back with a statement reflecting what Miles just said, you know, we're happy that that's covered.
I'm supportive of that. Yes, no objections is good.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll hear back from Friday's conversation at the board level. Maybe continue some of the discussion here about where approvals happen in the issue. I guess this is the PR, and we'll try to keep this moving. But
yeah, and I think there is some urgency.
Yeah,
we've already had one travel approval, which we did a one-off, and sort of the current state is, it's confusing to people.
mm-hmm.
Honestly, for myself, and I don't know if the Node project would be okay with that, like there's no reason why we can't take an iterative approach here, whereby like we solidify the CPC's ability of having a budget, and then like separately, if a project wants to have its own budget and make a request and augment, you know, the governance to support that. I personally think continuing to to limit the fund for now. Like, I think we should just land this personally, and iterate if projects would like to see their own specific funds.
One thing I will suggest, I've been looking into different ways to streamline this process, and one of the tools that we've been developing here at the LF has been the Community Bridge funding tool, I guess you'd call it, which includes travel fund. And one of the ways that this works, one of the things it can be used for is if you have a project, whether it's OpenJS Foundation as a whole, managing a big bucket of funding, or individual projects want to set up their own individual funds, you can receive funding not just from the board, but also from companies who want to contribute directly to a travel fund, which can then be allocated out and controlled directly by the project. So there are definitely ways to do this if there was some reason that a project felt they needed to have their own separate discrete travel fund. And in that case, the situation for funding that would either be approach the board and request some funding to go into it, or approach a company that's willing to support the project directly with travel funding. So there are definitely ways to do this. We have the tooling to support that use case, whether it's a single travel fund for the organization, or if there's a centralized one plus one or two projects which want to maintain their own.
I think that's a good idea to explore, but might be a bit of a tangent for, like, I think the Node project, if they said we want to, we expect to have management of our own fund, would be expecting that to come through the existing channel for now. I guess, Miles' point of, can we get this landed so that it's clear that the CPC can approve travel as a first step? Actually makes sense to me. And then, basically say, okay, all projects, we've got this global fund, we can review and approve requests. If you want to manage your own for an event or whatever else has proposed, make a proposal and we'll refine from where we are.
Yeah, and I think it would make sense to have some sort of, stamp of approval from the project's leadership, or steering committee, whatever the case may be. So maybe we can squeeze that in there. But I think I agree with Miles. We should just get this sorted, landed, and iterate from there. So let's see what the conversation is on Friday, and try to get this closed up next week. Sound good?
I think somebody putting in that comment, Miles, or somebody to basically say, yeah, the suggestion to have projects do approvals themselves makes sense, but can we treat that as a separate extension? Would be a good thing to get in there, so that once we get the board statement, then we've got everything ready to say, okay, yeah, this can land.
Sounds good. Cool. So moving on, the next item is responsible security disclosures. And you got to do a couple of repo jumps here, but the place where this is tracked, I believe, is the Node.js Security Working Group issue 589. And I don't know if there's anything to report here, Michael. Do you know?
I don't have anything. I think it's basically in development.
Okay. Oh yeah. So the last thing is Marcin. So he's saying he needs to familiarize themselves with the OpenJS projects and processes first. Should we try and have a powwow with him and talk about any of this, or?
I commented in the issue. There's a couple issues, but I commented in one issue basically saying, do you need anything before you make a first cut?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you want to take a first cut and then we'll go back to the CPC for feedback? And I don't remember seeing anything that said, hey, I need some help first.
Okay. And is this does the I assume the security working group meets bi-weekly or on any sort of cadence or anything?
It could be once a month.
Okay. And is there like an agenda that this could be tossed on just to check in on and see if
It could
there's any
be,
way that
but
we could help?
really it's an individual who's working on it.
Got it. Okay.
I mean,
All right.
I would, if you want to jump in there again and ask if there's any help needed, you might do that. Otherwise, my plan was to kind of let him work away until, it's like, hey, I could use some help, need some input, lining something up.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, I'll just drop a comment in, and I'm not trying to be pushy. I just if I can be helpful, I'm happy to be. Cool. All right. So the next item here is the post bootstrap work. From memory, there is the project board that has the CLA bot and I think DCO issue, as well as project funding issue, and then the admin policy docs. As I mentioned last week, I've got a draft PR open for the admin policy docs, and hopefully we'll get that done soon. Ben Mitchell has offered to help me get that over the finish line. But I'm not sure if there's anything related to those other two issues around DCO, CLA, or the project funding stuff. I know there's a board meeting soon, so maybe that's, next week we can check in. Yeah, Brian, Michael, anyone? Nothing new there?
So I can open. CLA wise, the CLAs are set and they are in Easy CLA. I have onboarded a couple of architects repos to it just to test it myself and to get their feedback. As of right now, the feedback's not super positive, only because it's a different process. The former CLA system was like 2 clicks, I think, to sign in with GitHub and sign the CLA. And this is a DocuSign process. So there's a few clicks, filling in your name, signing, clicks. So they're not super stoked on that process. But that's about where we're at.
Okay.
And I don't know if there's much, if projects want to go with the CLA, I don't know if there's much of an option other than going through that process, especially for the ones currently using the old CLA assistant, because we'll need to be migrating them off of that to whatever they want to do sooner rather than later.
Okay. Does anybody have any thoughts on this?
Oh, I was realizing I was talking and I was muted. Sorry. So I feel like it's a little bit of a catch-22 because some of the projects that have been on the JSF CLA would be open to moving to something else, but they don't understand what like the cost of conversion is, if you will, like what overhead might they have to incur? Like, do they need to go get everybody's agreement, that kind of stuff. So I just wonder if there would be if the CLA solution is to sign the DocuSign. I'm curious, why not just create a new OpenJSF instance of the existing CLA of and continue with CLA assistant to minimize disruption, or is that just off the table?
I guess the question becomes who's going to maintain that,
Yeah.
because the LF is maintaining the new system. And the issue we ran into with the current CLA system is that we were counting on volunteers to keep it going.
And we don't want the we need the self-hosted version of that. We don't want to use the SAP hosted version.
I mean, I don't think that's been discussed.
I guess I would also ask, how much of a barrier is it to have to fill out, you know, if I recall correctly, it's like 5 fields, something like that. And I understand the process is different, but is it a substantial barrier, do we think, as opposed to the typical barrier of filling out a CLA?
I mean, so just my initial feedback, I mean, just going through it myself, I found it odd that I even had to fill out fields because I had to connect my GitHub account to it during the process. So I assumed it was going to pull information from my account, and it didn't. So that was strange because the current system does that. You log in with GitHub and it pulls the information from your account.
And is it you have to fill out stuff for every commit?
No, just one.
Okay, this is just
So this is CLA.
right.
So it's a review. So CO process, which is every commit.
Is that something we can fix, the data coming in from you know, syncing it with GitHub?
I mean, I can ask. I'm not entirely sure where that would sit in terms of the team's priorities, but I can ask.
Yeah, I mean, I would be curious because I don't understand why my GitHub needed to be authenticated if you weren't going to use it.
Yeah, it may just be a bug that, you know, it's not coming across properly and populating.
I mean, other than I guess I guess there is probably just in the background, it's grabbing the GitHub user account info so that it can actually tie the commits to the CLA signature. I guess that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, like I said, in my opinion, it's annoying that it's a few more clicks and things to fill out, but it's not that big a deal. Just the initial gut reaction that I got from a couple of people on the architect team that tried it was they were concerned that it could be a barrier because it just feels more corporate. At least the old one, it was like log in with GitHub and you're good to go.
I mean, I guess the flip side of that is that, you know, CLA is a commitment. You know, it's more than just a click through. So, you know,
Oh, sure.
you know what I'm saying? Like there are some reasons that, you know, that a person would want to sit down and read what they're doing and what they're agreeing to, whether their first name and last name are automatically populated or not. What's really important is the content of the document itself. So, I mean, I can ask and see.
Contributors are going to read that and understand it. Like it's
a valid
important that I
question.
understand what an iTunes like terms of service agreement says because I'm committing to things. But like, I don't know anyone that ever reads it.
Yeah,
I mean, you might read a bit more on the first time through. I mean, how many of these are people going to have?
I mean, it's the same document for every project. And the way that the flow works is that if somebody has not signed the document for a project which has chosen to enforce having a CLA, then the first time their pull request gets blocked, the bot drops a link in that says, go here and sign this. So you go and sign that. And then for that particular organization, any of the repos for which that CLA is turned on for, then you're good to go for all future commits. If you go to a second OpenJS project and they're also requiring the CLA, that'll be the exact same text of the CLA, but you have to sign it again because that's a different CLA group.
Is it true? Is that true?
Yes.
Because that's not the way it appears to me. Because everything, the way it's set up in the system right now is it's all under an OpenJSF. project, and then you just connect orgs to it and then tell it which repos to turn on.
My understanding was that each CLA could only associate with one org, but I could be wrong on that.
You can have
Could be right.
multiple CLAs in the CLA assistant solution. You can affiliate a different CLA with like by even repo if you wanted.
Mhm.
I mean, that's in the old, but I think that's in
Right.
the latest version. Of CLA
But
assistant.
that's not even, yeah, I mean, that's not the issue, like,
Yeah,
it,
that is true of Easy CLA as well. So you can, if you have an organization which has multiple repos underneath it, you can assign one or more CLAs on a repo by repo basis. My understanding was that each CLA group would only apply to a single organization and any number of repos within that organization. I wasn't aware that it could apply across them for one signature. I can double check that though.
okay.
But I guess it's important as well as what's the intended model and is it working in that model?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it would be, if that is the case and it's only by org, that's going to be another blocker, because I think at least for the former JSF projects, they're used to one signature working, because you're signing a foundation CLA, not a project CLA.
Makes sense.
I mean, I'd also expect if I'm signing it with my GitHub account that like it just works for my GitHub account for anyone that checks that CLA.
Right.
I do wonder.
Again, I could be
these-
misunderstanding the interface, Brian, but from what I saw, it seemed like I could have hooked up, well, any of the orgs that I actually have permission to hook up, and they would have all been under that same group using the same CLA, but maybe it separates them by org behind the scenes. I don't know.
Well, Brian, can you get clarity on what's the intended experience here, and you know, we can see how that lines up with what actual experience is, and you know, see what we might need to do to move forward.
Yeah, I'm just getting logged in now to see.
But yeah, to your point earlier, Brian, though, like I totally agree that it's really not that different and shouldn't be that big of a deal, just from a signing process point of view. That was just their initial gut reaction. I haven't spoken with them since then, so.
You checking something out, Brian? Should we?
No, you can go ahead and move on. I was just looking, just checking to see if we connect other
Yep.
organizations within the same same project in Easy CLA if a single CLA signature applies to all of them. So let me get that figured out and I'll get back to you.
Okay, and Chris, is this something that you know, any of us can also try out on an architect repo, or what do you suggest?
I don't know. I would have to talk to Brian and Ryan, because I mean, you have to send a pull request to a repo.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they want to be flooded with bogus pull requests.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it wouldn't be bad to be able to test this out somewhere, so maybe we can try to figure that out. Some, you know, maybe
Yeah, I mean, we
cross-project
could maybe look at just setting up some repo somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, I mean, we're testing on real repos in Architect,
Hmm.
but maybe there's somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, we could just spin up a repo in the OpenJS Foundation, you know, and just hit that as a test
Yeah.
and then delete it.
Yeah, we could do that.
Okay. If somebody who has experience integrating that would be great. Could share it, and we could see what the experience is.
Yeah, I mean, you can just put that on my plate. It shouldn't be too much work to clean that up.
Cool. I will dig up that particular issue and drop a note on it. Do we? We don't have a lot of time left. 1 minute. So I'm not sure if we want to get into the next issue, but I was peeking at it earlier. This is chartering the standards team, and one of the things that Miles calls out in the description is some steps for the CPC being reach consensus that chartered working groups will be a thing, and document process for chartering. So that's something that we could discuss briefly if we'd like to. I'm trying to see if the admin docs that I was bringing over, I believe, is around working groups. Where is it? Working group requirements, as you know, laid out from the TSC in Node.js. So I'll make a link at least there. But I guess maybe that's something we'll talk about next week, since we probably have about 16 seconds. Just guessing.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because it's probably a bit longer discussion.
Yeah. But I'll drop a link in that issue, Miles, and we can discuss this further next week. Cool. Well, we'll call it a day. Appreciate everyone's time and their efforts, and we'll talk more next week for sure, but maybe in between. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers. Let's see here.